If you think this is just another Bears versus Packers game, you are already missing the real earthquake happening right in front of your eyes. Because what Stephen A. Smith dared to say isn't just bold, it's borderline heretical in NFL media circles, and that's exactly why people are losing their minds. Calling Caleb Williams a legend in the making while picking the Bears to upset Green Bay and take control of the NFC North isn't just a hot take, it's a direct challenge to decades of hierarchy, to the idea that Chicago is supposed to know its place and Green Bay is supposed to own this division by birthright. This is the kind of statement that splits locker rooms, rattles fan bases, and forces everyone watching to pick a side, because you're either ready to believe the Bears are no longer waiting their turn, or you're convinced this is another classic overreaction that's going to age terribly. Stephen A. didn't tiptoe into this conversation. He kicked the door down and dared everyone to question whether the Packers are really who they think they are anymore. Especially now, especially without Micah Parsons, especially with a rookie quarterback in Chicago who doesn't look like he's playing scared. This is the moment where narratives get rewritten or exposed as frauds, because if Caleb Williams walks into Saturday night on his home field with the division hanging in the balance and outplays a Packers team that's been bullying the Bears for years, then the entire power structure of the NFC North changes overnight. And if he doesn't, if Green Bay still finds a way to assert dominance, then this whole legend talk gets mocked into oblivion. That's why this take feels dangerous, that's why it feels uncomfortable, and that's why you can't stop listening once it starts. Because this isn't about one game, it's about whether the NFL is quietly handing the keys to a new face in one of its most historic rivalries, or reminding everyone that hype doesn't mean a thing without scars that Chicago hasn't earned yet. What we're talking about here is a Saturday night showdown at Soldier Field, with massive playoff implications, the Packers coming into Chicago after beating the Bears at Lambeau just 2 weeks ago, but everything has changed since then because Green Bay lost Micah Parsons, their all-pro pass rusher, and suddenly the defense that terrified quarterbacks looks human, vulnerable, and incomplete. Right now, the Bears sit on top of the NFC North, even though analytics still project Green Bay to win the division, and the winner of this game could clinch a playoff spot if Detroit slips on Sunday, which is exactly why this discussion exploded on First Take, because it forces you to ask who really needs this game more and who really owns the pressure. Stephen A. and the panel didn't just talk about expectations, they dissected them, and that's where the conversation turns combustible. Green Bay came into the season with Super Bowl aspirations, no debate, and a week ago they still looked like an NFC championship contender, but injuries have a way of exposing how thin the margin really is. And losing Micah Parsons isn't just losing a player, it's losing the luxury of being comfortable anywhere. As was said, with Micah you can go on the road and survive, without him you want to be at home. You want every advantage you can get because suddenly the cushion is gone. On the other side you have Chicago, a team that already exceeded expectations just by being relevant, with a rookie quarterback who's shown flashes of brilliance and mistakes that remind you how young he still is. That's why the Bears needing this game more makes sense. Because youth needs familiarity, it needs rhythm, it needs communication that doesn't get disrupted by hostile environments, and it needs the run game to function without chaos. That's where the Bears argument gets real teeth, because the Bears don't just have a good run game, they have the best run game in the NFL according to the conversation, and when you're talking about January football in Chicago, that matters whether people want to admit it or not. Stephen A. leaned into something a lot of analysts try to downplay, and that's weather. Because while this isn't Miami melting in the cold, the wind off Lake Michigan is real. The difficulty of throwing in that environment is real, and if you can't run, you're in trouble. The Bears can run, and that's not hype. That's how they're built. And when you combine that with a Packers defense adjusting on the fly without Micah Parsons, you start to understand why Stephen A. isn't backing off this take. The panel went back and forth about whether home field really matters to these offenses, with some arguing both teams travel well, and others pointing out that inexperience changes the equation, especially for a rookie quarterback and a first-year head coach in Ben Johnson. That's another layer people are glossing over, because while Ben Johnson has been excellent, this is still his first year as a head coach, and moments like this test decision-making under stress, the kind of stress that only playoff implications and divisional rivalries create. The Packers, for all their injuries, still have Matt LaFleur, who is 12-1 against the Bears, a stat that looms over this matchup like a ghost, because history doesn't care about hype, and if Chicago wants to truly turn the page, they have to beat Green Bay when it matters, not just look competitive. That's why Stephen A. bringing up Caleb Williams' ups and downs under pressure isn't criticism, it's context, because we've seen the spectacular plays and we've also seen the interceptions when drives mattered most, including against Green Bay. The difference now is environment, confidence, and opportunity. And that's where the legend talk comes in, because legends aren't defined by clean paths. They're defined by moments where everything is stacked against belief. Green Bay being undefeated in the division this year while Chicago and Detroit sit at 1-3 adds another wrinkle, because it reminds you that Green Bay knows how to handle divisional business, even when last year was a struggle, and that's why some people still don't feel great picking against them. Even those leaning Chicago admitted they're still believers in the Packers. And that hesitation is exactly what makes this game dangerous, because uncertainty is where upsets live. The conversation also shifted to whether Green Bay would get a pass if things fall apart in the postseason, with injuries to Micah Parsons and key offensive weapons like Kraft being part of the equation, and that debate exposes the double standard teams live with when expectations are high. Green Bay will have some excuses available, no doubt, but as was pointed out, there's an opening in the NFC. Detroit isn't what people thought. San Francisco is vulnerable. Philadelphia isn't last year's version. And that means opportunity doesn't disappear just because adversity shows up. That's why Stephen A.'s stance hits harder, because he's not saying Chicago is better in a vacuum. He's saying this is the moment, this is the window, and this is where a rookie quarterback can accelerate a franchise's timeline by forcing everyone to stop treating them like a feel-good story. Calling Caleb Williams a legend in the making isn't about crowning him prematurely. It's about recognizing what these moments do to young stars when they're ready, and what they expose when they're not. Soldier Field on a Saturday night with the division on the line isn't neutral ground, it's a test, and Stephen A. is betting that Chicago's run game, the weather, the youth-driven hunger, and Green Bay's injuries tilt the scale just enough. Whether you agree or not, this take forces you to confront the uncomfortable possibility that the NFC North is shifting, that the Bears aren't waiting anymore, and that the Packers, for the first time in a while, might actually have to defend their status instead of assuming it. And that's why this debate won't die quietly, because if Chicago wins, this isn't just an upset, it's a statement, and if they lose, then Stephen A.'s words become fuel for every skeptic who says legends aren't made in December hype cycles. Either way, this is why you watch, this is why you argue, and this is why you subscribe and hit that like button if you want to stay in the middle of these moments when narratives crack and something new tries to push through.